I'm going to talk about a tool called intensity of presence. Now, I'm sure you know people, maybe you're one of them yourself, maybe you know others that are like this. There are some people who walk into a room and their presence is immediately noted. They have energy, they have enthusiasm, they are there, they are present, they express their opinions, they speak with conviction, they speak with passion, like I just did right now. That doesn't mean that they're right. That doesn't mean they are in any way stronger or wiser or more correct. It's the way they are. Now, some others walk in and they're quiet. They're very subdued. They don't say very much. They occasionally say, and even then in a very low voice, often without the conviction exuding in their expression. But their conviction comes from their thought. They are so convinced when they speak it, you can see the conviction. But it's not in the intonation. It's not in the power of their presence. These people, so the two different categories of people, one of them, the first person I talked about, has a high presence. The intensity of presence is very high. The second category, their intensity of presence is lower. There is nothing right or wrong, good or bad, better or worse between the two. It is just the way people are. So I've created a model where on this axis you look at the intensity of presence of the individual. On the other axis I have the power of authority. For whatever reason, different people in an organization, in an institution, in a business, different people have different levels of power of authority. Obviously, the CEO would have a high level of power of authority. Some new person just joining at the ground floor of the business will probably have lower power of authority. I'm going to talk about how one might be perceived depending upon where you are on this axis and where you are on that axis. Where you are on the axis of the intensity of presence, where you are on the axis of power of authority. If you have a low power of authority and low intensity of presence, you can easily be ignored. You can easily be ignored if you are in this realm. Not that you should be, not that it is right for people to ignore you, but it is easy to happen. In contrast, if you have a high intensity of presence, you can be very effective here. You can be highly effective if you have a high intensity of presence when you have very low power of authority. If you have conviction, if you have passion, you express it professionally, compassionately, but in the right forum. If you express it and people say, gee, this person has ideas, you're very effective. But as you grow in your career, and as your job functions grow, as your responsibility grows, and your power of authority increases, if this person moves over to this end, up here, the same behavior can feel very intimidating. Because this person who has a very high intensity of presence, given all that power of authority, they can be very intimidating to others. Whereas the person here, who has a high power of authority but much lower presence, can actually be a very good back of the room leader. This person can be a very good back of the room leader. There is nothing right or wrong about any one of them. And the reality is, different people are at a different level in their intensity of presence. Not that we have one point, but we usually have a range, a place where we are very comfortable, and places above that and below that we have to make efforts to be. Whereas here, this is almost given to you at a moment in time in your career. Whatever your job is today, you have a certain power of authority. Understand this model, you might be able to use it more intentionally to operate with a different intensity of presence to be more effective. So, for example, if you are naturally, if you have a high intensity of presence, and you are the CEO, or you have a high power of authority, be careful, because your presence might actually be viewed as intimidating. So, find mechanisms by which you can reduce that level of the presence, the intensity of presence, and allow others to kind of have the flow. In contrast, if you have low power of authority and you typically do not have a high intensity of presence, find ways by which to create higher energy, more enthusiasm, something you care about, that you feel passionately about, and establish that higher intensity of presence. You could be more effective. So the tool is really designed not to say how you should be as a person, but rather, given who you are as a person, how you might behave in a particular situation. Intensity of presence is all about being very intentional to match who you are with where you are.